Hello and welcome to The Chaos of Scale, the podcast dedicated to helping scaling businesses navigate the human side of growth. I'm your host, Andy Golding, and today we're talking about the ick of process and the discomfort that comes with formalization. As we scale, structure and formality are more and more necessary to keep things running smoothly. But how do we navigate this transition and that kind of icky feeling of becoming corporate that goes with it? As always, I promise to leave you with at least one thing to think differently about in how you work with others and one actionable step to help you show up as a rad or even more rad human at work. You know the drill. Please like, subscribe, and share. And for some extra kudos and gratitude, please leave a review. Process, structure, formality, we need these things as we scale, but we also see them as the things that get in the way of that startup freedom and flexibility and agility that we love. When we're small and scrappy, we can afford to be unstructured because there's so few degrees of separation. And we need to be hyper responsive and flexible, and everyone needs to wear multiple hats and have a hand or a finger or a toe on everything going on. But as we grow, we simply can't keep working that way. The small teams who just know what to do and naturally work the same way begin growing. And suddenly we need to teach newbies how to do these things because we have multiple people doing the same thing. And we can't have 6 people interacting with customers in 6 different ways with 6 different tones of voices on 6 different timelines with 6 sets of differently made promises. We really need to start writing down our processes and our structures. So what's the structure for adding new users to the system? Or what's the tone that we use in customer emails? Small teams can survive on osmosis, but bigger teams, not so much. And so we reach this chaotic tipping point of we need structure. And often when that happens, we've been in so much chaos that this we need structure panic sets in. And then we want a pendulum swing to being super rigid. And this is our non-negotiable way of working going forward. These are the steps that we follow. But that also doesn't work. This is where we need to find the balance. Instead of writing the rule book, we need to draw the playing field. What are the boundaries, not what are the rules governing every step that we take? When we give people boundaries to play within, there's still space for magic. When we give them rigid rules and structure, there's no space for magic. And that magic, the creativity and people's native genius, can't shine through. We lose access to that. And as we scale, we start to see more and more examples of this need for structure. I think support functions are a great example of this because they often begin to get overwhelmed with requests. Because often what's happening in a scaling organization is you have a fairly small support structure supporting a growing team because those support structures are often the last to grow. We grow our customer-facing teams first. And so you've got these support structures who are getting overwhelmed with requests and they need to bring in the structure to keep juggling all the balls effectively. But in the chaos of scale, where priorities are shifting and the goalposts are moving, they also have to retain flexibility. They can't get rigid inside of their process because otherwise they can't serve the business properly. And as humans, we generally really tend to like black and white. We do it this way, we don't do it that way. But there's a whole lot of gray that exists here, and we can't pretend that it doesn't. Let's say we've built a process and we ask, okay, why have we built this process? Well, this particular hypothetical process helps us serve the customer more quickly and more effectively. Aha. So the higher principle here is we're optimizing for helping the customer more quickly and more effectively. So at the end of the day, what's more important? Following due process step by step or getting the customer to done in the most effective and impactful way? Sometimes we have to bend the rules or have a broader playing field to work in and divert from standard protocol, and that's okay. And this is where the Chaos of Scale Guideline 1 comes in. Pause for quality. Pause for quality and re-look at what matters more in this situation. If the higher principle of serving the customer more quickly and at a higher quality is primary, which it should be, then it needs to be okay to divert and dip into the gray, provided that we're not breaking other things and other people along the way. Sales teams are a great example because often sales teams grow quickly, understandably, which means that the way that we sell needs to be uniform. So we need to bring in CRM and we need to manage and track sales, and we need to then get people to play nice with the CRM. We need to get them trained, we need to get them to adopt it, and that's a hack. Making sure people know why you're formalizing the process or why you're introducing a structure is so important. It's so obvious to the sales team that they need a single source of truth for customer information, for customer history, for customer insight. But if I'm not in sales, I've probably never really given much thought to what drives a sales cycle or what's important in making effective sales. So record a 2-minute video, do a presentation at the next all hands, meet with each team individually if you need to, but make it obvious to them why this matters and why it's valuable to the company. And if you can make it, you can give them a good reason to get on board. They don't have to like it, but they can disagree and commit because they can see the bigger picture. It's so much easier to then bring them on this journey with you. Beware the curse of knowledge. That's the Chaos of Scale Guideline 2. But what is obvious to you is probably not obvious to them because they don't live in the same world of work that you do. So bring them on board to help you make this change. And with all structure and process, if we can give people a good and valid reason for why we're doing this, we're much more likely to achieve success. The way that we do onboarding and recruitment needs to change to accommodate not just the headcount demands of scale, but also onboarding the monthly influx of people. The CEO might have been able to meet with all new hires individually, but at some point she's just too busy and it's not a good use of time anymore. So you build a structure for monthly group onboarding calls where once a month all the newbies join an onboarding call and the CEO and different execs get to introduce themselves and what they do. But for the love of all things newbie, please build a structure and guideline to support these busy top managers in running effective onboarding calls, because consider the impact of a bad onboarding call on newbies and their employee experience. But I digress. I do think that inherently we can all understand why we need to add structure and process as we scale. But the fact that it's a change and we're not really very good and receptive to change as humans. I recall I was once at the office. It was late in the day, work was nearly coming to a close, and suddenly the communications team is in hustle mode. A last minute request has come in from a team whose bad planning means this post needs to go out today, and the comms team had zero line of sight. Now, this is a team that is traditionally reactive and responsive, so they're scrambling to get it done. They have been trying to implement structure and process, and clearly not all of the teams are playing ball. So later on, I was chatting to the manager of the team, and they were understandably exasperated by what had gone on and frustrated that this kind of kept happening. And I said to her, what if you said no? What if when this last minute bomb dropped, you simply said, no, we can do this for you tomorrow, or even better, here's the request form, please fill it in and we'll schedule this in accordingly. Now, the team on the receiving end of the no is going to be unhappy. They'll be in an understandable flap. They'll shout and scream and jump up and down if their urgent doesn't get met, but their urgent doesn't have to necessarily become yours, within reason, of course. And this is where flexibility is important. But I guarantee you that that communications team will only have to tell that team no once or twice, make them wait once or twice before they start playing ball and following due process. When we're implementing these processes and standards, we have to be consistent in our actions. We don't have to be perfect and we don't have to be rigid, but we do have to be consistent. Why? Because when we're implementing structure and process at scale, we're taking the business through an unlearning exercise. They've been working this way as long as they've been with the company, and now suddenly we're saying, the way of working is changing, so we need them to unlearn some stuff. And then we're taking them through a change process and a relearning of the ways of working. And as natural creatures of habit, you can understand that this process is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for people. We start to get that ick of process of, we're becoming so corporate. No, we're just growing, and we're growing up at the same time. If you still ran around and operated like you did when you were a toddler, you wouldn't exactly be a functional adult, and the same applies to the business life cycle. The ick sucks, kind of like growing up sucks sometimes, but it is necessary. Your action item from today's episode is to take a fresh perspective on structure and process. Are we writing rule books, or are we drawing the playing field instead? We're very quick to poo-poo process and structure and say that it takes away our flexibility, but I would argue that structure and process are exactly what we need in the chaos of scale to help us maintain flexibility. If we have structure and we know how things work and the generic stuff just runs smoothly, then we have the space to be thinking and ideating on how to improve or how we can get better at things. And if we're constantly running around in the chaos without structure and we're so busy in the minutiae and we're too busy to think about anything else, that's where the problem lies. So instead of structure and process being the handcuffs, I'd actually wager that lack of structure and process in a scale-up is what holds you back and keeps you sprinting through mud. So they're not the enemy, they're necessary, but remember, don't write the rule book, draw the playing field. Thank you for joining us today. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with a colleague who might find the experience of listening to this valuable. Maybe they're experiencing similar challenges and you think this might help. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and review wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Andy Golding. This is the Chaos of Scale. And remember, business growth is messy, but the human side doesn't have to be. Until next time.